Looks like we got folks jumping in now. We'll give everybody a minute to get settled, grab a water, grab a beer, whatever floats your boat, and we'll get started off in a second. But man, looks like we already got a bunch of familiar faces jumping in. So how's everything on the West Coast, my friend? Surviving?
It's good. Yeah, this is exciting to see all the folks joining here.
Yeah. No, it's fun. You always hit hit start. It's just like the flood of folks jumping in. So it will
I
be
just I just ever wonder if anyone listens to anything I say. I know most of I joke my team doesn't, but this will be fun.
I'm right there with you. I'm like, I wonder if people actually listen to me and what we're saying,
Yeah.
or if they just hear us laugh the whole time. Either way, we get to have fun. So
Yeah, no, I'm excited for today though. I think this will be fun talking about the rep versus the op experience. I'm curious to see what breakdown we have of the attendees so between reps and ops.
I know. I know a couple familiar faces, but some of them I don't. So we'll see. We'll see what comes up. But we got a little poll question that'll help us find that out too pretty quick. So
Awesome.
cool, man. Well, we're about a minute in. I know folks are getting settled, but we'll go ahead and get things started. Obviously, for anybody that jumps in late, if you do this, we get it recorded. We get it on YouTube pretty quickly. So, but that being said, welcome everyone to another episode of Shops Talk. If this is your first time joining us, thanks for taking the time to jump in and have fun with us. As I was telling Pouyan earlier, if there's anything for this 30 minutes, hopefully it's the easiest part of your day. You get to kick back, relax, tell some jokes, have fun, talk all things operations and sales, and really make sure that we're able to help provide value. At the end of the day, hopefully you walk away with something. But again, for those that are first-time viewers or jumping in, welcome. We always like to say thank you to all the folks that are involved in getting this set up. We wouldn't be here without some of our sponsors like Salesforce, obviously Sonar, WizOps. Excited to have our friends over at Scratchpad on. So I'm about to turn the mic over to Pouyan. I'll let you introduce yourself, and we'll get things kicked off. How about it?
Awesome. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this because we've been talking about this for a while. But hi everyone, I'm Pouyan, the CEO and co-founder at Scratchpad. And what was it? What else, am I supposed to add anything else?
Dude, whatever you want to add. Tell us a little bit about Scratchpad. Tell me what you guys do.
Yeah, I'll trivialize what we do for a second. We just remove clicks. And that resonates with a lot of folks, especially in sales. If you're working directly in Salesforce, you know what that means. But no, in all seriousness, though, we think of Scratchpad as like the first workspace designed for a salesperson. And the way we landed on it was we just saw how a bunch of folks worked. Everyone has Salesforce, email, phone, maybe a call recording system, but most of the work is done outside of it. Evernote or Mac Notes, Google Sheets, Excel, random task managers. And so we just combined all of that together into what we call one workspace designed specifically for the salesperson. Obviously, removing clicks is a big part of it, making it fast is a part of it, and adding a little sprinkle of delight throughout the app is another part of it.
I love it. I'm sure a lot of folks that are joining this, and we'll add context here, but just so often we have so many thought leaders and folks directly rolling their sleeves up in the ops space. And so when Pouyan, you and I were catching up about this episode last week or the week before, we were joking. It's like, wait, there's a whole component to the operations world that we're helping solve problems for. I say we collectively, we as in the Wizard of Ops community, Sonar, Scratchpad, we're all supporting the operations world. But there's times that we kind of forget to get out of our own little operations bubble and start thinking about the other groups that we're actually supporting sometimes, like sales teams. And I think what's really unique about not only the way our solutions work together and how we solve these problems, but what we're going to really be talking about today. And we joked around last time, we're going to take the gloves off. Well, I've got my gloves on and I'm ready to.
Mine came off already. Dude. I'm ready to go.
You're ready to go. He's ready to remove all obstacles. But I think what's fun, and this is where we're just going to start diving right into it. I'm going to drop a quick poll in for the audience. Everyone, please jump in. We always like to hear from you. This is actually the same poll that we did earlier this week in LinkedIn. And so I just posted that. Feel free, everyone, jump in and start to ask questions or start to log your vote. But what I find really interesting about this topic, again, I've been there, you've been there, honestly, from both different sides of the spectrum of why is there so much tension sometimes between operations teams and sales teams? Just, we'll call it out there. We know it's there. We felt the underlying tone of it. We've joked around before, like, on the ops side. I'll let you do yours on the sales side,
Yeah.
but There's not on the ops side. We're like, I don't get it. Why can't you just follow this normal process? I literally put validation rules around this thing. That way it's idiot proof, but you still can't get my process done. Or what? You only have to close 10 deals a quarter. That's not that much. Just go get it done. Like pick up the phone a couple times, right? And we always had this banter internally sometimes in the ops world. I'll let you do the same part on the sales side. You beat me up a
Yeah.
little bit because there's a lot of it that way too.
Yeah, and I can take both sides because we hear it, but I'm sure from the ops perspective too, it's like, come on, how hard is it to update next steps? You've got the field there, you can click into it. The other one I've heard is, listen, we created the page layouts for you. Everything's there, all that you need. I don't get it why the folks aren't putting the information in. And yeah, this is for everyone listening, where Brad and I kind of had some fun, and this idea came from is, that tension is there. I don't know if it's talked about openly all that much. I think usually everyone kind of goes into their corner and talks about it. So I think that was the intent for this session today, is like, let's take the gloves off, let's make it real, but then let's talk about why it exists and what we can do. But yeah, I'll bring the rep perspective in, because what we do at Scratchpad, I mean, we're solving for reps. We talk to reps all day long. And by reps, I mean not just account executives, but account managers, sales engineers, customer success folks, all of the end users. And what we hear about their view of the ops world is probably a lot of the stuff I can't say on this call, but I'll try to filter it a bit. But some of it comes back to, we just don't get it. It's like, ops is not for us. Ops is not working for us. Is not solving for us. It almost feels like ops is there working for the organization and not me as the rep. I talked to a rep that literally had to bribe the ops person, because they said, they went on this 3-month-long journey to come up with new dashboards and reports for us as the reps to help us sell better. They put everything out there and none of it was useful. He's like, literally, I had to go and take the ops person out to lunch, bribe with $100 bill to see, can you make a report for me that's useful for me, that will actually help me sell better? And so that just highlights some of that tension that exists. And obviously we've got some opinions on why and what to do about it, but it is real.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And even just looking at these poll results, and I've got the poll results from this poll just now with the folks that are on this call, and I've also got it on this other screen, the poll results that we talked about on LinkedIn. And overwhelmingly, this is by design, or really kind of coincidental, but it also just speaks true to it. Of the 4 options, Salesforce is too rigid, data entry, time is too much. Stop me if you've heard that one before. Validation rules and required fields, or the handoff is broken. In this poll today, 62% of the folks that are on here said that exact same thing. On the poll on LinkedIn, 61% actually said that same thing. And so, data entry is tough and it's time consuming. Fast followed by validation rules and required fields and things like that. And so, I think what I find so unique about this, and we'll talk about this as we dive into some of these questions, that there are so many times that I think there's just a misunderstanding. And that sounds cliche, it sounds corny, but a lot of the times we're going to dive right into this question. Some of us don't know what each other do. And it's not because a lack of empathy or anything else. We've never sometimes walked the mile that the other person's walked. And so it's easy to quickly judge. And man, I asked you to just build a field. It can't be more than 6 clicks. Just go build the damn field. Come on. Like, hey, all you gotta do is pick up the phone and call that guy and they'll buy it, right? So there's always just these layers of onion that you have to peel back and understand what's about each other's job. But in this first question, when you think about describing the difference between these 2 roles, there's a lot of angles you can go, and I'll keep this purposefully vague.
Yeah, I feel like, Brad, you're trying to keep it very political and down the middle. And like I'm saying, let's just go for what the reps are saying. I mean, honestly, I had another team say, listen, and no offense to anyone that's an ops here, and I feel like I'm in the minority, most folks are, but they're like, our ops team is useless. Not from the rep perspective, I say that, not from the team, but simply because they said, any changes we want to make, it's going to take 6 months for that to get implemented. By the time that's in Salesforce, management has already decided on a whole new methodology or no whole new flow. Now, listen, we work with a ton of ops teams. We know that's not the case, because I think ops is in a difficult situation as well, because a lot of times these requests come from maybe it's coming from leaders somewhere, like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we track that? Or what if we had this information? That gets passed down. It's got to be put in the Salesforce so that things are tracked. And so that tension, I feel like, is really because of the organization and the way it's set up, but it is very real. And
Yeah.
hold on, we got a note come in. Yeah, it's shocking. So let me draw an analogy. At
Yeah.
Scratchpad, we're growing the team very quickly. We're actually looking to bring on another designer. So we've been interviewing a ton of designers, and I'll loop this back to ops in a second. Just bear with me. It's just been shocking to us how many designers we have talked to and interviewed that don't talk to users. It blew our mind. I mean, my co-founder tweeted about this. And the reason I think this is an important point is because if you break down the role of ops, sales ops, rev ops, whatever you want to call it, a big part of that job to be done, I think, is actually asked to be a product designer in a way. And that's something that it's an angle that I don't think a lot of folks think about it that way. Is that what are the implications of adding a field, modifying the page layout, required fields, validation rules, all of these elements impact how people work. But that's not a resource or I guess a skill set that a lot of ops folks naturally have, or companies even think to give their ops teams. And so I think that's a big part of the friction that we've seen.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And this designer role, excuse me, and I think as you talk about designers that you're probably interviewing for, product side of things, I'm with you. It blows my mind how few conversations designers have with customers or prospects or anybody else going to be
Yeah.
using it. And take that internal, right? How many times is operations going over to the sales team? Hey guys, how can I make this better? Like,
Almost none. I'll tell you, we're working with hundreds and hundreds of organizations. I've talked to thousands in, both our research and coming up to this. And I cannot think of a single time where an ops team, and I don't want to put any one person, but actually went through and said, you know what, we're going to make these changes. Let's actually sit down with the reps and let's just shadow. Now, this isn't even going to customers. This is your same team. Just go sit and watch how somebody works for an hour or two.
yep.
And, build empathy for that case today of what it's like today, and then what that change might look like if you modify certain things, right? Let's add a new custom object and relate it to this and make that required field. How would that impact somebody? Or even ask that in those basic studies. And, again, it's not, I don't want to say that this is ops fault and they're lazy. I just feel like, gosh, if designers aren't even doing that, how is it that ops is expected to do that? And I wonder if maybe that should be part of the thought process, is when you're going through a change process, more thinking about the implications that it has on how people work.
Absolutely. You're spot on. And we talk about this in WizOps, we talk about it internally here at Sonar, like even our category being change intelligence. Like, how do you go make those changes more intelligently? Well, first off, don't make them in a vacuum. Don't make them by yourself or because one person asked. Like, go have a thoughtful conversation about it. Jackie Leahy just actually chatted to us or opened a question. And hey, Jackie, good seeing you. Previous member on jumping in on Shops Talk before. And I know she has a certain perspective of this, but just her comment together, LOL, execs love asking for fields to be required. I make them break the news to the end user. I think that's actually a really good call too, because even we had another person on the Zach Stafford on the panelist over here ask us a question too. It's like there's so many times that these things kind of come down from a leadership position, and I'm not saying anybody in the ops world needs to go around their leader and not do what their boss is asking them to do, but you can push back. I think there's a healthy friction, so you can push back there. Hey, I know you need this field required. Have we told the sales team about that? Have you asked them how that's going to impact their day? If we need to design this the right way, do we know it's going to impact everybody? So it's always interesting to me seeing sometimes, and we're in the same boat that you are, where you're interviewing your customers and your prospects and said, are we actually making these things thoughtfully? Are we thinking about these things the right way? Are we actually interviewing the right people? Do we know what these downstream impacts are? And it kind of blows my mind that so many times, like you said, it sometimes just gets made in a vacuum, or we don't interview the right people about it. Have you? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say we can start getting on execs for a little bit. I feel like,
Beat 'em
Brad, you
up.
and I are both in that position, so we can just knock each other down for a bit too. Because I think from an exec perspective, it's listen, this is what's hard is challenging execs. So if anyone's here in the ops world and you're getting those requests, I think helping somebody reframe or rethink, because a lot of times people present a solution. Required fields is a solution. What's the problem?
Yes.
Probably like, hey, we're not getting the data that we need in these fields, or we'd like to report on it. how might we be able to get better data around this so that, it impacts all of our flows. And required fields, or I guess validation rules, is one way of implementing it. And this actually goes to another observation I've had in working with a lot of ops teams is the world of resources, the world of solutions that I think a lot of ops folks have is very limited.
Yeah.
Because today it's limited to what Salesforce offers. It's page layouts, validation rules, required fields, and then maybe a ton of training to supplement it to make sure that folks understand what they're trying to do. And one ops leader actually saw what we did at Scratchpad and was like, this is what I would have built as an ops person with design resources. Because I think where the future is going is, and I've heard this from a lot of ops folks, I'd be curious to see what people here say, is trying to solve that problem through abstraction, which is Salesforce is your system of record. You can have the required, you can do everything that you need, but there is so much visual noise and workflow noise that goes to the reps. How do you put a layer of abstraction so just what you need gets to the rep? And what we've learned is if you can reduce that drag, if you can reduce the friction, reps actually do this stuff already. It's not that they're lazy and not updating it. They're just doing it in their own spreadsheet because it's faster to work with. And so we just took a whole different approach. And I think what's interesting is that was our solution, but we've seen a lot of other ops leaders have a similar style of thinking and similar approach, which is how might we get the data that we need, but without having to force it. And I think that's that trade-off that a lot of folks have to make today is we want the data. And if we go over, if we try to make it too rigid and too structured, that then impacts workflow. It impacts time and market. It impacts how much reps can actually sell. And that's the piece that I wonder if you went back to the execs with and said, sure, imagine you had an ROI calculator for every required field that you built. You can add all the required fields and all the validation rules you want. Here's the impact that it's actually going to have to every single rep's time and market.
Yeah.
You can make the trade-off.
Yep. You're spot on. Well, I find it also just as interesting that this is going to be one of those questions that I was just going to like bluntly ask. We've seen it not work, and we've seen the friction. Now, what I think if we can get anything to is like, is there a common denominator to the ones we have seen work? I've got some assumptions, and I've got a couple of things that I've seen just badass ops folks actually be really good at it. Here's my theory. I'm going to pressure test you on this, and you're going to say, Brad, you're off your rocker. Like, yeah, that actually works. Some of the folks that are decent at it, I would say decent, I think we can all improve, but good at finding how to make sales reps' jobs better, have done one of two things. They've either been one, and they've made that conversion, and they have that just level of empathy that goes along with it, or there's a good chance they might have come from the consulting world. Jackie being one of these that has doing that so much. And as a consultant, if anybody's walked that mile before, it's either on this, and if you have as well, it's, part of your job is go do a ton of requirements gathering well before you go click any buttons and actually like execute a change or build something for your customer, whether it be customer internal or external. But have you seen anything just like kind of definitive, like pound your hands on the desk, like here's a really, really good ops person that actually does listen to their folks, their sales team, go to market teams? What's the common denominator there?
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's, if I break it down, and you nailed it, which is the one word is empathy. And the way you can develop that empathy is if you were if you were a salesperson then became ops, if you're in consulting, you naturally have to have that because you're curious, you're asking questions. But I think if you don't have that, I think you can easily get there. And looking at any project or any initiative that's comes down the pipe and looking at it through the lens of design thinking. Because it's ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to there's this job that you're trying to accomplish, which could be leadership wants some more data. We're trying to implement a new workflow. There's a new methodology we want folks to follow. And I think it just requires breaking the current mental models of, like, one thing where I'll tell you where, and I'll come back to this in a second, where we see folks break is when they don't apply that and they simply think everything has to be done in Salesforce. Yeah. And if you go into it with just that mindset, which is if you're not doing the job in Salesforce and it's not in Salesforce, and that's starting to shift, right? Because, and that's where that one person said with Scratchpad, they're like, you designed what I was working on, which is we just use the API, but we abstract it through the user interface and make it super fast and intuitive so reps actually use it. But I think that's where they were coming from is the best ops folks I've seen in terms of actually being successful at getting these initiatives done is they're getting very creative with how they do things. because they know they need to get the data, but they also recognize that you can't brute force it. And you may be able to get some reps to follow up, but it is going to take such a hit on productivity and effectiveness, and just going to be, unhappy sales reps, which some people don't care about, but the reality is it does make a big difference. So I think it's just a shift in mindset.
Yeah. The one thing, and I'm going to circle back on this because you brought up a really good point on the abstraction part, and that people look, we're all in this ecosystem together, and there's a reason why it's actually called the Salesforce ecosystem. So here we are. But I think the one thing that we're all realizing now with a lot of connected apps, we had Max Altschuler on from Sales Hacker and Outreach before talking about the same thing, that we're finding more systems out there that are so complementary to Salesforce and tightly integrate and help support the ecosystem that now become additional sources of truth for things. And his whole theory is like, while we have everything residing in Salesforce, yes, system of record, we all have the same thing, right? If it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. We get that. And that's a true statement, right? I think every ops person here is probably nodding their head,
Yeah.
ops and salesperson here. But what we're finding is removing those barriers sometimes, the friction that gets involved to getting that data in. And at the same time, clearly optimizing that process is going to be something that I think we're going to continue to see. We wouldn't have an ecosystem if it wasn't for other parts of the ecosystem touching into it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm really curious. I have one more kind of like open question. Of course, for everybody on the call, please drop questions in, do it in the chat, do it in the Q&A. We want to hear from you. But even keeping that in mind, this evolution that we're seeing in the tech
Yeah.
stack ecosystem, current state versus future state, where do you see this continue to evolving?
Yeah, let me add one more point though, because I think we just talked about Salesforce, and I think with Salesforce acquiring Slack, there's some interesting things that are going to happen, because we also see there's pretty distinct, I think, groups of ops folks that we've seen. There's ones who I feel like have gone through the path and have run into every brick wall, and we're like, we know that's not going to work. And then ones that are on that path and are going to run into the brick walls and realize it's not going to work. And I'll throw another example that we hear from reps supporting that point of our ops team just doesn't get it. From an ops perspective, there's a lot of folks I've talked to that view the world through the lens of features. Oh, well, that's a cool feature. That's a cool feature. That's awesome. That's going to do this. Why don't we trigger a Slack notification for every event that happens that an ops person might want to care about? And I think on the surface, again, that sounds cool. The systems work and like the notification shows up. Where that misses the mark, though, is back to that point of empathy. And if you spend time, and I think somebody just wrote here, like their superpower is coming to the admin world from being an end user, just spend 30 minutes with a rep and see how they work. I mean, we did this to design Scratchpad, but ask, do you want more notifications?
Yeah.
What is the impact of yet another notification? And what you'll realize is so many reps I've talked to have just shut it all down. Everything's on mute because they're like, it is so noisy. And you were talking about different systems of record. There's so many different systems now that are throwing notifications my way as the rep. It's hard to know what to pay attention to. Every channel in Slack is lighting up, email notifications are popping up, and it's almost hard to find any time to focus and to sell. And that level of distraction that's being thrown at the rep, I think actually has very serious consequences, because to sell certain deals and make progress, you have to be proactive. You have to take some time to think about the deal. And it's so hard to do that when all this stuff is being thrown your way. So, all right, cool. We just got another confirmation from the rep being like, yep, we just turned off Slack notifications. So, yeah.
It is. Just thought, I think if you don't make that dedicated time to go focus on those things, and you have noise around you and those distractions, man, you're for a world of hurt. You're gonna be backpedaling so much. You're never gonna be proactive and get your stuff done. And that could be true for both sales reps and ops folks as well.
Yeah.
So it's so true. I think, and you mentioned this, and I'm going to come back to the big point that you just had. And I know we got about 5 minutes left. So again, get those questions in, folks. We're happy to answer them. Spending enough time with your customer, and customer being a vague term, it can be internal. If you're ops, your internal customer is sales. If you're sales, your customer is truly your customer. If you spend enough time with them and listen to them, you're going to find the right solution, not the right feature. You're going to find the right solution that fixes them. And we have such a really cool example of this. We didn't draw up the game plan this way with it, but a guy on our team, Mitchell, our sales engineer, to date, been here for about 6 months, and he's phenomenal. Salesforce, just genius. He's actually moving over to a product role internally in our team, and it's mainly because he has such a great way of listening to our customers, also listening to our current reps, how can we make some of this stuff better? And you get to be that medium now between what you hear and what you get to go implement. And again, I think if there's anything you take away from this whole episode, and, the nuggets that we like to leave folks with is go listen, go talk. You can
Yeah.
keep the gloves on, you can take them off, you can punch each other, beat each other up. But at the same time, like if you just have a conversation as to how it's going to get a little bit better, it's not that tough. So,
Yeah. No, and you asked a good question about current state versus future state, some of the things that we're seeing. And, I'll just reflect back what I'm hearing from a lot of the ops folks that we're working with at Scratchpad. And I feel like more and more are starting to realize that Salesforce, listen, Salesforce is a really important part of the ecosystem. You could argue it's at the core.
yeah.
But the concept, this idea that to get the data into Salesforce, you have to be working in Salesforce is slowly starting to break. And that idea, and I'm just reflecting back what I heard from another ops leader, which was we're solving this through abstraction because our Salesforce instance is such a disaster. I can't tell you how many Salesforce instances we've worked with that have 4 next step fields.
Yep.
How do you expect the rep to know which one? And maybe they'll hide some of the other ones, but that's just an example to show how many have maxed out on the number of fields on an opportunity object or insane page layouts. Like I've literally had reps be frustrated simply because of the scrolling required to get to the field that they want. And so that idea that Salesforce remains as the database, but that you can actually solve it through abstraction and create really sleek, intuitive UI and user experiences that are optimized for how reps work and actually get the data into Salesforce. We've seen some ops leaders try to build that on their own. Obviously, that's a core part of what Scratchpad does, so I'm biased on that side, but I see that as such a big opportunity because if you really build that empathy and you listen to how reps work, you look at the other tools that they use, it's Evernote or Mac Notes, it's Google Sheets or Airtable or Excel, or it's Asana and other task managers. And that's because those are more modern UIs. They're fast, they're easy to work with, they're intuitive. And then all of a sudden you have to switch and log into Salesforce and you have to wait 1.5 to 2 seconds just for the page to load.
Yeah.
And so I'll stop my rant there.
Yeah, I love it. Well, because I think, between the conversations that you have, that I have, that we all have in our communities and with everybody, customers, prospects, friends, colleagues, I think the one thing that I take away from a lot of it is that the evolution of all this stuff. And I say that in a very corny way. Yes, we're in this evolution of tech stacks and we're moving things around left and right. New products and new features and solutions are coming every day. Grand scheme of things, common denominator, we're all making that ecosystem. And I keep using that word, hopefully correctly, that everybody resonates with everyone. But you said it, at the core, at the epicenter, it's there. There's no intention of replacing it or doing anything other than just making it better and making it more reliable. And I think that's the one thing that we take away with, sales reps, sales ops, rev ops, marketing ops. We're all trying to make this ecosystem better. So what can we do? We can all win. We can all have more revenue, all have more happy customers, etc. So I know we're getting close to the top of time. I always like to throw a couple of rapid fire questions out there. Some of them were on our prep conversation. Some of them I'm just going to go totally rogue on. But easiest one, hopefully, probably for you. What's either something on Netflix, TV, or podcast? What's piqued your interest most recently that you're doing a little bit in your free time?
For me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, I'm biased. I'm listening to the All In podcast just because our David Sachs is one of our similar investors. So I think that one, there's just such interesting perspectives. And then my wife just got me on a show called Community.
Yeah.
On Hulu, you know that? Okay. So that I'll try to catch some episodes of that, but I find that pretty funny.
Love it.
Yeah.
What when you think of, look, we're April 22nd, we were catching up earlier, we're all in the last sprint to our fiscal quarter, kind of all aligned to the Salesforce fiscal quarter that way.
Yeah.
When you think of the remainder of this year, what's got you excited? What do you think is going to be something evolutionary or just something exciting that wakes you up that we're going to see in this fiscal year for us?
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be anything radically new, but I think from our perspective, there is going to be just more incremental changes that are small, but then add up to actually being something big. And that, again, a reflection of what we're working on here and how we view the world. It's not these huge shifts, but they're little things that together add up and create something really special. So I think this concept that we're working on, which is a workspace for a rep, I think hopefully that starts taking hold, that everyone sees, yeah, like chefs have it, woodworkers have it, engineers have it. Why does a sales rep not have a place that's optimized for them? Because it's certainly not Salesforce. So I'm pretty excited about that.
I love it. I love it. I'm with you. I think I started thinking about this earlier today. News finally broke. There might be some in-person events. Shh, don't say it too loud. I don't want to jinx it. But man, I think about 2021. I'm like, I get to actually see some people in person hopefully
Yeah.
sometime
So that
soon.
I didn't want to go there and open that up. But like, yeah, it's gonna be weird. I wonder if Zoom is actually gonna be start seeing as like something you don't want to do, whereas early on it was pretty awesome. But
Yeah,
um I think we all have Zoom fatigue. So
it happens. It happens to
yeah.
the best of us. It sure as hell happens to me a lot. So, last question before I let you fly. I know you're a busy man. If you were to rewind the clock all the way back to your career, whether it be in the ops world, sales world, as an entrepreneur, if you could give yourself a piece of advice as you're going down this journey, a little bit of self-reflection here, what would be your advice? Because we do have a lot of folks that are
Yeah.
on this episode that are new in their careers. What would you give them advice for?
Boy, okay, three things come to mind. So I'll throw those three out really quickly. Number one, I guess as a founder, this is really important. So if anyone's thinking of starting their own thing or has been one, the what you think is really great is probably not all that great, and what feels like is the end of the world is probably not. And so it's this, everyone talks about the emotional roller coaster. I'm sure that applies um, in 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 careers as well, but just having that emotional regulation to stay stable is one. I think second is just getting really effective at being able to give and receive feedback. It's something I feel like it's not a skill set that most companies teach, and it's something you learn just through practice of how not to do it, but figuring out how to do that, because I think that helps people work better together. Um, and three, what was the third one I was going to say? I think it's just back to those first two.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'll kind of sum it up and sort of encapsulate, like, show some humility,
Yeah.
be ready to ask a lot of questions, ask for advice everywhere you can get, and take the highs with the highs and lows with the lows, because
Yeah.
what you might think is at the very top might not be in somebody else's opinion at the very bottom. The world's definitely not ending. Don't worry. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Oh, and then sorry, I remember that this is the most important. I can't believe it, but uh, optimize for working with people, the right people you're inspired by, people you learn from, because I think that more than anything else around the op just makes such a big difference, and it's one of the things that's honestly kept me going and doing startups for what, almost a decade now, is being able to have some control over that more than most. But I think surrounding yourself with people that you really learn from and are inspired by is really something special.
you're spot on, man. I love it. I know we're a minute or two over. We all got busy days. Thank you so much for just jumping in with us, hanging out, dropping some knowledge. Obviously, thank you to everyone for attending. We'll have this up on YouTube and in our communities relatively soon. So, Leon, we'll let you go, man. Hope you have a great
Thanks.
rest of the
Thanks for
week. Go
having me.
close the
Thanks for
corner
everyone.
strong.
Thanks so much. You
All right,
too.
buddy. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Hey, everyone. Take care.